Welcome back to the AZ-900 Fast Track. All right, in this explainer, we are building the absolute foundation of your Azure knowledge. Seriously, this is the bedrock. We're going to cover the core physical architecture and the management tools you'll be using every single day. Getting these concepts down cold is a must-pass for the exam, so let's dive in.
So here's the deal. In the next few minutes, we're going to totally master the two pillars that everything, and I mean everything in Azure is built on. First, its massive physical globe-spanning infrastructure, and second, the digital hierarchy you'll use to manage it all. You know, getting this right isn't just a good idea, it is absolutely critical if you want to walk in and ace that AZ-900 exam. To really wrap our heads around Azure, we're going to take a zoom-in approach. We're going to start way out at the planet scale, looking at Microsoft's global network of data centers. And then, we're going to zoom all the way in to see how that physical hardware actually protects your applications from failure.
First up, the region. This is probably the first and most fundamental choice you're going to make for most services. A region is just a specific geographical area, like East US or West Europe, and it's packed with data centers. So why pick one over another? Well, you might pick a region to keep your data close to your users for better speed, or maybe to comply with local data laws.
You want the easiest way to remember this? Just think of Azure regions as the major cities on a world map. It's that simple. When you decide you're going to build something, the first thing you have to do is pick which city you're going to build it in.
Okay, so now let's zoom right into one of those cities. Inside a single region, you have these things called availability zones. Now listen close, because this is important. These are physically separate data centers. The key takeaway here is they have their own independent power, their own cooling, and their own networking. They're built from the ground up to be isolated from each other.
And this image here shows you exactly what I mean. If a region is our city, then availability zones are like the separate buildings you see, each with its own independent power grid. So if one building loses power, maybe that one on the right has a blackout, the others stay online, no problem. This is the secret sauce to high availability within a single region.
But what happens if something truly catastrophic happens? A disaster like a hurricane or an earthquake that takes out the entire city. That's where region pairs come in. See, Azure pairs most regions with another one that's at least 300 miles away, but still in the same general geography. This is your plan B, your big-time disaster recovery plan. And boom, here's a massive exam alert. I can almost guarantee you'll see a question asking you to tell these two apart. Just remember it like this. Availability zones protect you from small, local failures, like a server rack overheating in one building. Region pairs protect you from massive disasters that could wipe out an entire city. So local failure versus regional disaster. Got it?
Now this is a super important concept for the exam. Not all Azure services are built the same when it comes to resiliency. As you can see here, some services are zonal, which means you are responsible for placing them in a specific zone, think virtual machines. Others are zone redundant, which is awesome because Azure automatically copies your data across zones for you, like with a SQL database. Understanding this difference is key to building apps that don't fall over.
Okay, we've totally covered the physical world. Now let's switch gears and see how we actually organize all our stuff in the logical world. How do we keep our projects from becoming a total mess? The best way to think about it is like a digital filing cabinet. It's all about creating a neat, logical hierarchy.
And here is that hierarchy, from the very top all the way down. At the top, you've got management groups. That's the entire filing cabinet. Inside that cabinet are your subscriptions, which are like the big drawers. Each drawer holds resource groups, which are your folders. And finally, tucked inside those folders are your actual resources, the documents, the stuff you're actually building.
Let's zero in on that folder level for a second, the resource group. This is the fundamental building block of how you organize everything. It's basically a logical container for all the related bits and pieces of a single application. And here is the golden rule. Every single resource you create in Azure, without exception, must live inside a resource group.
And it's time for another classic exam alert. This one trips people up all the time, so I want you to think about it for a second. In the physical world, can you put a folder inside another folder? Sure. But what about in the Azure world? Can you nest resource groups?
The answer is a big, fat, definite no. This is one of those facts you just have to burn into your brain. A resource can only be in one resource group at a time, and you absolutely cannot, under any circumstances, nest one resource group inside of another. The structure is flat at that level. Remember that.
All right, moving up one level, we've got the subscription. That's the drawer in our filing cabinet. A subscription is basically your main account or agreement with Microsoft. It's the boundary for two really important things: billing and who gets access to what. All the costs from the resource groups inside it roll up to this subscription, and this is where you set up permissions.
And finally, we're at the very top, management groups, the entire cabinet. So imagine you're a huge company. You've got departments for HR, finance, IT, and each one has its own pile of subscriptions. Management groups let you apply one single security policy, like say, no resources can be created outside of Europe, to all of them at once. It's all about having centralized control at a massive scale.
Okay, so we've got the physical world down, and we understand the logical hierarchy. But how do you actually get the keys to the kingdom and start using this stuff? Let's do a quick run-through of the accounts and the tools you'll use to interact with Azure.
Here's another exam-focused comparison for you. There are two main ways to get started for free. The standard Azure free account gives you some credit for 30 days, but, and this is key, it requires a credit card to verify you're you. The student account, on the other hand, gives you $100 of credit for a full year, and crucially, does not require a credit card. The exam loves to ask about that difference.
Once you've got an account, you've got two main ways to talk to Azure. On the left, you have the Azure Portal. It's your graphical dashboard, a point-and-click interface. It's awesome when you're learning or you just need to quickly check on something. On the right, you have the Cloud Shell. Now, this is for the power users. If you need to spin up 100 virtual machines at once, you're not going to click 100 times in the portal. You're going to write one simple script in the Cloud Shell.
All right, that was a ton of foundational knowledge, I know. We covered the entire globe and then organized our digital filing cabinet. So now let's lock it all in with a rapid-fire review of the most critical points you need to know for the exam.
You're ready? Let's do this. First, regions are geographic locations. Availability zones give you high availability inside a region. Region pairs give you disaster recovery between regions. Second, every single resource must live in a resource group, and a resource can only be in one. And you absolutely cannot nest resource groups. Third, the hierarchy flows down from management groups to subscriptions to resource groups and finally to your resources. And fourth, subscriptions are your main boundary for billing and for access control. Burn those points into your memory.
And that is a wrap on core Azure architecture. You now have the essential blueprint, from the global physical infrastructure all the way to the logical way you're going to organize all your work. In our next explainer, we're going to start building on this foundation and actually explore the core services you'll be using every day. I'll see you there.